All right, so if I measure from the bottom of my flap to the top of it, I'm just over 2 inches, really at like 2 1/4, so I'm definitely ready to stop. I have some extra yarn. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this extra yarn and we're gonna knot it around the very last warp string that's here. So I'm just gonna kind of like bring it underneath here to make a little loop. I'm gonna twist this little loop. Actually, let me trim this off of here first. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it underneath here like that. I'm gonna make a little loop and twist it around my finger, and I'm gonna bring the end through the loop. So you're basically doing a little knot around that last warp string that you finished off on, right? So make sure it's really tight on there. You don't want it to come undone and then your flaps start to unravel. Okay, make sure these are all pushed down. I can trim that off. Okay, and so now I'm ready to start removing the warp strings from the loom, tying those off, and then we can take the weaving off of the loom. Okay, so to do this part, you want to cut the warp strings as far away from the weaving as possible. If you cut them way down here, your weaving will probably just start to unravel, and all that hard work you put in, oh, you'd just have to redo it. So that's not good. So I'm gonna stick my scissors way up here, and I'm gonna cut these, like I said, really far away from the weaving itself. So I'm gonna slide them in. And what's nice is that like these strings kind of stay attached in there and they won't move, and I'm gonna tie these ones off first. So I'm just gonna pick 2 strings to start with on one side, and I'm just gonna knot them together, just like we've been knotting and tying on new strings. So I'm gonna take them, it's like I'm tying my shoes, one over the other, bring the end through the loop, and pull. Now you don't want to yank on these really hard. You just want to stop. Like the first one you want to be really, really gentle with, and you want to do that same thing again. One over the other, bring the end through the loop. So you're double knotting it. This one you want to tie pretty tight. Okay, so set those 2 aside. Now go on to the next 2. You always want to tie the neighbors, okay? So I have these 2. I'm going to cross them, one over the other, bring the end through the loop. Gentle on that one, do it again, really tight on this one. So I'm gonna do that with all of these on this side. All right, so these are really long, and you could choose to leave them really long, like fringe if you want, or we could trim them a little bit down the line. So now I'm ready to move on to the other side, so I can pull these warp strings out of the top of the loom. Kind of like gently yank them out of there. And then, oh, that one's taped down, so you're gonna have to peel up the tape. Wondered why it wouldn't come out. Pull that one out. So now you're gonna do the same thing. So just start at one end with the first two neighbors and tie it the same way. One over the other, through the loop. Gentle on the first one. One over the other, through the loop. Pull it nice and tight on that one. Then go on to the next 2 the whole way across on this side. All right, so I got to the very end and I have one random extra warp string that I didn't have anything to tie onto. So I'm gonna take one of the pieces from my last knot and then that last warp string, and I'm just gonna tie those 2 together the same exact way that we tied everything else. One over the other, through the loop. One over the other, through the loop. You can't leave any of the warp strings just loose there, or it will unravel. All right, so we can trim these down. This is the one end of the bag, so I don't want to trim them too short. I'm gonna leave probably like 1/4 of an inch. Just trim them off. And then for the flap, if you want to do fringe, you can. I think this is a little too long for my liking, so I'm gonna trim them down a little bit on this side too. Okay, so I trimmed them down. Again, not too close to the bag. And now we can shimmy this off of here. So hopefully you guys didn't weave too tight. If you really need to, you could put the loom in between your knees and kind of pull this almost like you're pulling a sock off of somebody's foot. Don't be too rough with it and mess up your beautiful weaving. but you just want to slowly start kind of like working it down. This part, getting the end off of the teeth might be a little tricky, but just keep slowly working at it. All right, I don't know if you saw that, but I had to kind of rip that one random warp string off of there. And so I am gonna fix that up in a second. So there's a piece of tape on there. So we'll tie that off onto something in a second. Now, if your weaving looks like mine, it's all scrunched up, don't worry about that. We're now gonna flip it inside out. Okay. And then take this one warp string, tear the tape off of it. And I'm just gonna kind of like knot it. I'm gonna loop it underneath one of these warp strings. This is a step that I can come around and help you guys with. This one's a little bit tricky. I'm just gonna kind of loop it underneath there and do another knot. So twist the loop, bring the end through the loop, and then I can trim that. All right, so have my bag.